um, and here like managing MFA reset and managing
Mhm.
ABD testing. But I want completely on Azure to get job. So I want some kind of architect level, and I want to learn full fledged of on Azure. So that's what I'm.
Got it, Salman. So no worries. So here tech is actually
Yes. Salman, Ganesh here. Is your
No,
friends
no,
of
no, actually, my friend is today is busy now, so later he can join. I'll share you the recording. He said, yeah.
sure, sure. Gopal, there is other two people supposed to join, but they have got some emergency. So I'll pick up the meeting and that's it.
okay. So is this the only
You can go.
Salman who? So is this
Yes,
the
yes,
only Salman who gonna
yes,
continue with
yes,
this?
yes.
Perfect. All right. No problem, Ganesh. So I'll take over then.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hi, Salman. Salman, basically, I got the details. So what you're talking about. Okay. So basically, you are into system role, right? System admin role, and then you are slowly moving to the Azure. But you need to have the complete hands-on experience and the complete training. What exactly, how exactly the Azure works and all, right?
Yeah, from scratch to end.
Yeah, I understand from scratch. So no worries. So we're gonna give you the complete. I won't say that it's a training. So training is a kind of thing where you're gonna just share some PPTs and give some theory aspects, and then you just leave them. Right? This is not the thing. It's a more into just like the Azure admin who works on a day-to-day basis. So the task that he does, so that sort of task we're gonna assign you guys as well, so that you're gonna have hands-on experience along with, so that when you're into real time, right? So it would be pretty easy for you to go ahead and carry out those tasks. Okay, so yeah. So let me tell you something about myself. So my name is Gopal. So I have been into this industry for past 10 years. Okay. On Azure, I do have the 9 years of experience. So I am Azure certified 104 and planning to upgrade my skills to DevOps as well. Easy 400. Okay. So currently I'm working with ATSG. It's a Bangalore based organization, and where we do have the big client, the Textron, so whose infrastructure are being managed by us. Okay, so all the non-ITAR servers are being managed by us, and it's a very huge infrastructure and huge servers they have. And if they come across any sort of issue pertaining to the Azure, so we are the point of contacts and we do our troubleshooting. Okay, if any changes are to be done, we do that. And apart from that, we also do virtual machine migrations and everything from on-prem to Azure. Okay, so to be honest, in the real-time scenario, very few people having the experience where they migrate the servers from their on-prem to Azure. It could be from on-prem VMware, or it could be from Hyper-V, right? So but I do have the real-time experience, so where I have migrated, previously I worked with Entity, so where we had a client called uh, Varrock lighting system. Okay, so whose infrastructure are being managed by us, basically that's a data center, so where we have migrated nearly 180
Oh,
approximately, okay, 180 VMs from their on-prem VMware to the Azure. Okay, so and apart from that, previously I worked with the Mindtree, and there I was used to work for the Microsoft project. So where we used to support for the complete Azure infrastructure, we have different clients all across, like Capgemini, okay, Cognizant, Deloitte, right? So these infrastructure, the Infosys, so their server, their project are with us. Okay, so for them, we are the Microsoft. So we used to manage their complete Azure infrastructure. Okay, so that's how it is. So without wasting much time, so let me just go into the details of what sort of things that we're going to cover and what exactly the Azure is. And before I start that, I just want to understand. So what do you mean by Azure? Okay, even if you tell anything, that's still fine. I just wanted to understand where exactly you are. So what your knowledge and everything about the Azure and all, so that from there I can take it further.
See, actually, frankly to tell, I just want I have the practical knowledge on Azure. So,
Mm-hmm,
from my end, I got to know like it's completely like a cloud environment. Like
mm-hmm,
see earlier, you can use whatever like virtual machines, upgradation, whatever it kind of we have to log in somewhere, servers and blah blah, and you have to connect and you have to do. But it's completely like user friendly, and it's kind of web based application type, so you can do and you can hands on this and friendly nature of in the Azure. And compared to other Active Directory on premises, Active Directory I work on Active Directory on premises. Compared to that, in compared to Azure platform, it's very it's very different, and it's kind of a lightweight compared to that. That's what I came across.
okay, perfect. So yeah, well, you do have very good knowledge about it, so great. So well,
Even I do work on ABD testing like Azure Virtual Desktop, creating a pool, depth first, breadth first, and managing those virtual machines which are connected and
mhm,
everything.
okay. So all right, so no problem. So you have very pretty good hands-on experience on Azure AVD, right? So
Yeah,
which is a good thing
yeah.
and which would be an
Can I
added
can I
advantage as
can I hold 1 second? I'm my manager is calling. Can I hold 1 second?
yeah, yeah, sure.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah. Please continue.
That's fine, Salman. So well, Salman, so you have very good hands-on experience on AVD and other stuff, and it would be an added advantage going further. In fact, okay,
Yeah, I just to walk, but I just want to go through for what is going on that
right.
time and everything.
All right, definitely we're gonna explain you everything here, okay, and we'll also give you the task so that you're gonna get a very good hands-on experience, okay. So before I start anything, so just wanted to just give you some brief about so why people are what is Azure, okay. So basically Azure is nothing but it's the cloud service and being offered by the Microsoft, okay, where to manage the complete infrastructure, okay. uh, so comparatively to Azure, we do have the different cloud service providers here, okay. So one is AWS, you must have heard about it.
Yes, yes, I know.
Yeah, and Google Cloud Platform, right? But
Mm.
having those cloud services, why Azure is in great demand, okay. So there are some reasons why it is there. So first thing is the brand, the Microsoft, okay. The second thing is that the number of data centers what Azure is having, what Microsoft is providing is very, very, very high, okay.
Okay.
So which results in what you call the fast authentication, okay, fast accessing the resources and everything, right.
Mm.
And it gives you multiple options where to host the servers and everything, okay. So let's suppose you are in a Chennai, okay, and you're gonna deploy and you want to deploy in the Hyderabad data center, you can do that,
Okay.
okay. But the same virtual machine, if it is hosted and somewhere in East Europe and all, okay,
Yeah.
so when you connect to that particular virtual machine, it's gonna take some time, right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
authentication would be a bit slow, right.
Because
But when
like
it is
mm,
but the virtual machine which is hosted nearby your data center, so authentication would be fast, accessing of the resources would be pretty fast,
okay.
okay. And apart from that, not only data center, so there is a reason it provides to 99.99% of SLA, service level agreement, which means you have very less disruption of the services. Okay,
Mm.
so you will be having the availability of the resources almost all the time, and even if there is some changes or if any maintenance going on, you won't come to know, in fact. Okay,
Okay.
so they're gonna migrate, they're gonna switch their load from one data center to another data center, which eventually help you to provide continuing the services. Okay, and apart
Mm.
from that, when you talk about the being a server administrator, so Microsoft is having lot many applications. Okay, if you talk about M365, all right, the Power BI, right,
Correct.
so MS SQL services, there are
Correct.
multiple services are being provided by the Microsoft. Okay, and also the compatibility would be very easy when compared to AWS and GCP. Let's suppose if if I have hosted a virtual machine on Azure, Microsoft Azure. Okay, and later I came to know that this is the issue with the operating system. Okay, so it would be pretty easy for me to raise only one support ticket with the Microsoft, because the cloud service provider is Microsoft and the operating system is also the Microsoft,
Okay.
right? So
Mm.
single ticket, we can issue multiple issues with them. Okay, but let's say you have the virtual machine on AWS. Okay,
Mm.
and due to some reason you are unable to access the virtual machine. Okay,
Correct.
the one ticket
Mm.
you need to raise it with the AWS, and later you gonna come to know that this is the issue with the operating system, and which is a Windows, and again you need to raise another ticket with the operating system, which is nothing but
Okay.
this Microsoft. Uh,
Okay.
and now
Okay.
you need to bring both the peoples all together and troubleshoot the issue, which is again a hectic task in real
Correct.
time scenarios.
Correct.
Okay, so that is the reason Microsoft, or this Microsoft, is in great demand and Azure is in great demand, I would say. Okay,
Mm.
and also the offers. Earlier what we used to do is, when I talk about the normal bare metal systems, so we used to have the uh, server infrastructure and everything. Okay, and we used to manage everything. Let's suppose I got a project, and this project is only for the 6 months, right?
Okay.
But for this 6 months I need to deliver this to the client. Okay, there is a application of the software that I need to develop, and then this has to hand over to the client,
Okay.
right? But for that, again you need to have the complete infrastructure, right?
Correct.
You need to
Mm.
have the machines, bare metal, laptops and desktops and everything with
Correct.
good configuration. Need to have
Correct.
the space, need to
Correct.
have the 24 by 7 availability,
Correct.
right? Also the cooling system, which
Correct.
incurs a lot of cost, because post 6 months you never know whether you're going to get a new project or you need to hold. But for that
Mm.
you have set up the complete infrastructure, right? And you have to pay the rent and everything,
Okay.
right? So you need to have the people to manage the complete what you call the infrastructure and everything. If anything goes down, you need to have the technicians, you need to have the admins, you need to have the network admins, you need to have everyone all together to troubleshoot the issue,
Correct.
right? Right, so which is, I would say, it's a pricey thing. Okay,
And
so
this is very costly also. If you want to create an
exactly,
account also. Yeah.
exactly, for the see, for everything everything is again connected with the monetary benefits. Okay, so what Microsoft is saying, that Microsoft says that, okay, we are the cloud providers, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna provide you the portal. Okay, we give you everything over the portal, and the complete infrastructure will be managed by the Microsoft, the backend at the data center, and that data center will be managed by the Microsoft. If anything goes down in the data center, we don't have to worry about it, because Microsoft gonna take care about it, right? Because for normal person, for the normal infrastructure which I talked spoke before, for that you need to have the redundancy, not only in Hyderabad, you also need to have in a different locations, Bangalore, right,
Correct.
to have the availability. high availability,
Correct,
right?
correct.
If one data center goes down, so you need to have the other data center coming up. All
Mm.
right. So these are the some reasons so why people are more uh, uh, I would say more fascinated towards the Azure, and it's a real time. I would say that the real time plus for the server admins, and it reduces the task. But when we do the Azure admin, so Azure admin nothing but it won't say that it's only the server admin. You need to have the networking knowledge. You need to have the server admin knowledge. You need to have the operating system knowledge. Okay, and scripting is something not needed at this point, but you need to know, but you need to understand how to use those one, how to run those scripts,
Okay, okay. Correct.
right? You need to have the networking knowledge, you need to have the storage knowledge, okay, you need to have the virtual machine knowledge, right? So that's we're gonna so I would say the Azure admin takes care of all these things. So it actually what do you call, if you're Azure admin, and if I have the person who is only having the server admin knowledge, right, you will be selected the person who is having Azure knowledge, because he'll be managing both the networking, storage, backup, infrastructure, right?
Mm.
If any services, uh, Azure offers basically three types of services: infrastructure as a service,
Mm.
platform as a service,
Information
software as a
platform.
service, right? So
Yeah.
these are complete services are being managed by the Azure admin. So yeah.
What is related like DevOps and Azure? What is linked with?
Sorry.
What is like difference it of DevOps and Azure admin? Like what is completely like?
So DevOps is also, it's related to Azure only. Okay, but it is something more advanced compared to Azure. So in order to have the DevOps knowledge, so okay, so let me tell you one, let me just give you an example as well. Okay, so in any organization, okay, so we used to have the development team, okay, who develops the software, right?
Correct, correct.
Okay, okay, and also we do have the operations team, okay,
Mm-hmm.
so testing team and everything. So what, so developer, what they do is they develop the code and send it to the tester or the operations team. When it actually comes to for testing and all, if that doesn't work, but for developer it worked, okay, but for the tester it doesn't work due to xyz reason. Okay, tester says, see boss, your code doesn't work. Developer says, how can you say that, because it works for me, right? So obviously there would be a conflict between these two people. So in order to avoid this one, right, so that's the reason DevOps engineer comes. Name itself suggests dev plus ops.
Okay, okay.
Okay, so that is the reason. So that is the next grade, I would say, or the next level, I would say. So once you're done with the Azure infrastructure, sorry, the Azure admin session and everything, so you have a path where you can upgrade your skill to Azure architect, or if you want to go towards the DevOps, you can do that. But DevOps is in great demand, right? I
Mhm.
won't say that Azure once upon a time, 5 years back or 7 years back, we used to say that Azure is a future or the cloud is a future. No, but right now I would say that it's a present,
Correct, correct.
because most of the companies are migrating
Mm.
their servers from their on premises to Azure.
Okay, and what kind of like if I got job on Azure, what kind of work they will give like simply in a part of Azure? Yeah.
Okay, so okay, I'll come to that. Okay, I'll definitely come to that and I'll answer each and every question of yours. Okay, so I have noted down that, in fact. Okay, so I'll come to that, but before that, what we gonna cover it in this
Okay.
training, I'll just show it to you. Okay, so I'm just sharing my screen. Okay, do let me know once you start seeing that.
Sure. Yeah, I got it.
Do you see that?
Yeah.
Okay, so basically the topics that we're gonna cover here is would be what is Azure. Okay, we'll start with the introduction of the Azure, why Azure is, Okay, why do we need Azure? Why we are studying Azure? Why we are fascinated toward the Azure and all? Okay, and then we're gonna talk something about this Azure subscription, because billing and everything will be managed by the subscription. Okay, we'll go further into details. Okay, I'll give you example. So let's suppose if you have the mobile postpaid bill, right?
Yeah,
So you,
I got it. I know that I have a Azure subscription also with my link to my chart.
sorry.
I have my Azure subscription in I have created the Azure account and
Exactly.
I'm creating that. Yeah.
Exactly. So when we create an Azure account, that account is nothing but the default tenant, we can call it as.
Yes.
Okay. So inside the Azure account or the tenant, we gonna have the subscription. Okay. Now
Yeah.
why do we need a subscription? Because the resources and everything which we gonna deploy, okay,
Yeah.
will incur some cost. Okay. That cost will be charged, and you will be getting a billing and everything based on the type of subscription which you have selected, which you have opted for. Okay, so Azure basically offers a multiple types of subscriptions, starting with pay as you go. Okay, so where the type of number of resources that you have are deployed, right? And if those services resources are running, so accordingly you'll be charged pay as you go. How much you use, you have to pay. As simple as that.
Okay. It is valid for only 1 month, but AWS is giving for 1 year, right? Normally.
That is not a pay as you go subscription. What you have opted for. Okay, so
Okay.
let
That
me
is
just
no, I am in a free trial. That is, I
let,
didn't go for pay as you go, but 1 month I am in free trial actually.
let me tell you. So basically, Azure gives a free trial for 30 days.
Yes,
Okay,
exactly.
30
Mm.
days and 200 USD dollars. Okay,
Correct.
okay.
Correct.
If either of them gets expired, let's suppose your 30 days gets over, or if your $200 USD gets over, so that's when your subscription will be into disabled state. Okay,
Okay.
then you have to upgrade your subscription to pay as you go.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a one kind of
Huh?
subscription.
Same card will continue, is it?
Sorry.
That
Exactly
same
same.
card.
Yeah. Yes, so at the time of registering or the creating the account, so it gonna use your payment method. That's nothing but your credit card. Okay, if you
Okay.
remember, 1 rupee or 2 rupee gets debited and again it will be credited back. The reason being is
Okay.
that your credit card will be registered as a payment instrument to the Azure account.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, so further, if you are upgrading your from free trial to pay as you go, if you are upgrading your subscription and then you are continuing with the resource deployment and the other stuff, right,
Okay.
you will be charged. Okay,
Mm.
so pay as you go is one kind of subscription. Free trial is one kind of subscription which you normally get when you sign up for the free trial. Okay, pay as you go is just like number of resources and services that you are deploying and using, right? So accordingly you will be charged. Okay, and
Okay.
apart from that, for I have seen the multiple subscriptions. Okay, so we do have other subscription like Visual Studio Enterprise subscription, and also enterprise agreement subscription. Enterprise agreement subscription is something where it is completely the multiple account admins they do have. Okay, it's
Mhm.
altogether different. And also Visual Studio subscription where we'll be paying upfront cost. Okay, where and you will be getting monthly this many dollars.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, $150, $200 kind of thing. Okay, but in real time scenarios there are two subscriptions are mainly used. Or if any organization is tie up with the Microsoft. Okay, and if they have some what do you call agreement, right, just go with the Visual Studio agreement, Visual Studio Enterprise agreement or Visual Studio subscription, and we're gonna give you this much of benefits and all, so that they can do that. Okay,
Mhm.
and also if I say that I have a pay as you go subscription and post which I need to convert this subscription or upgrade this subscription to different subscription, yes, I can do that, provided I need to have the eligibility for the same at the back end. Okay,
Okay.
so for now, don't get confused much. Why do we need a subscription? I'll give you a very simple example. We do have the mobile bill. Okay, it's a postpaid bill, right? I say I'm using the Airtel postpaid services, and I have
Mhm.
opted for some specific offer. Okay, so according to that offer, I'm paying that.
Okay.
Okay, so but I'm using for this calls and messages and browsing and everything, right? But how it's getting charged? Right, it's
Okay.
getting charged based on the type of offer I have selected. So here nothing but it would be a subscription, the offer which I have.
Mhm.
Okay, okay. And again, for this subscription we do have different IDs and everything, so which we're gonna talk about later. Okay, and apart from then resource group. Why do we need a resource group? What is meant by resource group? So resource group nothing but it's logically connecting logically while grouping of the resources, the resources which we have hosted on the Azure.
Mhm.
Okay, so we are grouping the resources. We're gonna create one I would say that there is one room. Okay, in Hyderabad I got one room. So in that room I have the network device, I have the virtual machine, I have other stuff, blah blah blah. But when I talk about, okay, so this is the Hyderabad resource groups. When I go to this resource group, when I select this group, so if I go inside to this resource group, I'm gonna see all the resources which are being deployed here.
Mhm.
This is nothing but the logically grouping of the resources. Okay,
Okay.
so we'll go into detail definitely, but I'm just giving you the overview how exactly the thing in and what we're gonna cover in this training. Okay, so here we will take you through cloud computing, right, and give you some overview what exactly Microsoft Azure is and some services,
Mhm.
subscription, and the management groups, right? So
Mhm.
you asked me one question. So what would be your task, right? If you hired as an Azure administrator, right?
Ah.
So there would be day-to-day activities like starting and stopping of virtual machines, okay, and disk addition. Again, it depends on the level of access that you get. Okay,
Okay.
so being an Azure administrator, you won't get the complete service admin access. You will be you can be provided as a contributor access to make any changes and all, or the reader access up to some resources.
Mhm.
Okay, so which I'll take you through. Okay, so when we talk about the day-to-day activities, it would be like upgrading the virtual machine. Let's suppose I got the virtual machine, and earlier I didn't have much resource requirement on that. Okay, so it's just basic 2-core CPU and 4 GB RAM, and later when workload is increased, so I need to have the more resources added to that. So that kind of feasibility that we can do, so we can go ahead and we can resize. So that sort of task that Azure admin does. And if
Mhm.
someone is provided and someone has asked to check the port number if RDP 3389 is blocked or not, you can go ahead. If you want to add some port, let's suppose HTTP 80,
Yeah. Normally
you can,
HTTPS and RTP we can add for
right,
creating.
right, for HTTP you can do that also. For other ports also you can do that. SSH port 22, right, if you need to
Yeah.
make any
Actually,
changes.
I've created virtual machine for one Windows and one Ubuntu Linux servers
Hmm.
just for a trial period. I have a trial with the help of YouTube. I tried that.
Okay, yeah, so this type of task that you do, and apart from that someone needs an access to a subscription level or the resource group level, you're gonna provide it. Okay,
Mhm.
and if someone needs an access to the storage account, let's suppose I have a developer, I cannot give the complete Azure access to the developer, right? Developer says that I have downloaded the code and I need to store it somewhere in the storage
Mhm.
account, right? So what you're gonna do, you're gonna provide the SAS key to him to access the storage explorer, and where he can go ahead and update or upload his code and everything,
Mhm.
right? That kind of task that you do. And if any disk expansion that you need to do, you can do that. Usually we get a task where the drive gets full, right? So when
Correct.
patching
Correct.
happens, so we need to
Correct.
increase the drive space. So that sort of things that we do, right? Any change in the CPU that we do. And apart from that, And let's suppose if VNet peering has to be done, let's say there are two different virtual networks we have on the Azure, and those are to be communicated. So that sort of virtual VNet peering has to be done by us.
Mm.
Okay,
Okay.
and also we get a task related to the deployments mostly. So where you're gonna have what you call we call it as FSL, file system, FLS, file, no, FSL, it's a file system layout. So where you're gonna get the complete details of the Azure virtual machine network and everything. So according to that, you're gonna deploy the virtual machines, the virtual networks, the storage account, and everything.
Okay.
Okay, so provision that you need to do. So it's not that you have just deployed the virtual machine and your job is a no, it's not like that. So once you
Mm.
have deployed your virtual machine and everything, and accordingly you need to check thoroughly and you need to install the different things, right? You need to
Mm.
install the semantic, right,
Okay.
for
Normally
antivirus,
we have now Defender, right? Windows
defender,
Defender.
defender, semantic, or what do you call any sort of application which are the mandatory application, right? As per the
Okay.
company organization or the client norms, you need to install it. You need to configure it. Let's say they have a request for the Splunk, you're gonna go ahead and you have to install it. And if any script are to be run, you need to do that. You need to join the virtual machine to the domain. You need to reset the time. You need to make all the changes has to be done before it has to hand over to the server owner, or I would say client.
Okay.
Okay, so that we're gonna talk about it. So here we're gonna talk about the Azure Resource Manager. What exactly the Azure Resource Manager, and we're gonna take you through the Azure portal, right? And the PowerShell. We gonna use it. We have multiple options to deploy the resources. One is directly through the portal, which is nothing but the GUI, and also we have option through Azure PowerShell. The CLI also we have Bash. Also have,
Mm.
right?
Bastion and there are three only, right? RDP, SSH, and
Yes,
Bastion.
yes. Okay. And apart from that resource manager docs we talk about, we need to organize the Azure resources. We'll explain you how to organize the Azure resources and everything. So mainly if someone says that I need to have this web application hosted on Azure, you blindly cannot go ahead and do that, right? There is a process, there is a way. You need to plan it accordingly. You need to design it first, right? And that's when how the traffic is coming. So what sort of things that you need. So what all filters that you need to uh, deploy, right?
Okay.
So accordingly you need to have the complete uh, planning before you deploy anything, any resource, right? So once we're done with that, we're going to take you through the lab. We will help you to we'll show you how to create Azure account, subscription, billing and policies, management groups, right? We're gonna make you to use power portal or the PowerShell to deploy the resources and Azure policies also. We're gonna help you the policy, the list of we do a number of Azure policies which we have, which is uncounted for. This is just for the security reasons. Okay, and also for let's suppose I have set a policy where I cannot deploy the virtual machine which is of which incurs higher cost, so I can set a policy. Okay, yeah, one of the other person who is having access, and if he's trying to deploy the higher uh, resource virtual machines, he won't be able to because policy denies. So not only this, so we do have the different policies in Azure which we can enforced, right? And also we'll talk about the Azure virtual networks, right? We'll take you through the VNet components. We'll talk about the what is the IP addresses, the private IP and public IP, what is Azure subnets, VNet subnets. We'll talk
Okay.
about it. We'll take you to the CIDR, right? How exactly it is we are routing the IPs and everything. We'll talk about the NIC card, right? So let's suppose if I take you to the bare machine, okay? So what happens, so you're gonna have the NIC card and everything, right? But
Okay.
Azure portal, we'll talk about it because we'll show you how do we connect the NIC. One virtual machine can have two NIC cards, even three, also one NSG. Okay, so Azure
Yeah.
has introduced along by this NSG. This is for the security reasons, right? We need to mention the policies, we need to mention the rules. So what sort of
Mhm.
traffic should be coming in and what sort of traffic should go out, Okay, virtual network service endpoints, again it is for the security reasons. Service endpoint policies, we'll talk about it. We'll talk about the load balancer. Okay, so let's say
Mhm.
you have an application, right? And this application is hosted on a particular server on particular virtual machine, and everyone
Mhm.
is trying to access at the same time, right?
Mhm.
So there are chances where the application gonna get hung, right? And if I talk about, let's suppose it's AWS, or I would say it's Amazon website, commercial website where we do a shopping and everything, right? There are thousands or lakhs of users try to access the website at the same time, right?
Mhm.
If that website is hosted on a single server, so there are two things: either the service will get hang, okay, and also, right, the user won't be able to access. Either it would be very slow, or it will be in hung state. But in real time scenario, does that work? Do we really feel the latency? No, right?
No, no.
Because at the backend they do have the load balancer. Okay, the same types of virtualization will be hosted. The same, I would say,
It is
uh,
like here it will be like scaling plan will do, right? Scaling get.
scaling again would be different, but again in scaling it comes a horizontal and a virtual scaling. Yes, that will come into picture. In fact, we'll talk about it, that as well. Now in Azure load balancer, we do have the different load balancer: traffic manager, application gateway, Azure load balancer itself. Okay,
Okay.
so we'll talk about it. We'll talk about the Azure DNS, how exactly Azure DNS works here, right? We'll take you through the Azure firewall. We'll explain how exactly firewall works, right? And what sort of configuration that has to be done here, right? Azure Bastion service, what we'll talk about it. We'll take you to the route tables and the service tags, right? The tags are very important. Okay, so in an organization, so this is not only the production, we do have the development team, we do have the testing team, we do have the production,
Mm.
sorry, testing or the QA, I would say, development, QA, and production, right?
Okay.
So once
Correct.
is, so again we need to segregate the things. So how do we segregate the things? There is something called the tags. The naming has to be done there. See, this
Mhm.
is for the production, this is the virtual machine, the operating system is Windows, this is the virtual network, this is the subscription under which this VM is hosted,
Mhm.
right? So that is the reason tags are very important. I spoke about the application gateway. Again, this is for the load balancing thing. Azure front door service, Azure traffic manager. So this is again for the Azure load balancer thing. Application security group, we'll talk about it. We'll talk about the Azure Bastion, the network watcher, right? It actually checks, okay, where exactly things went wrong for the Azure networking and all, right? Azure Express Route, we'll talk about it. We'll take you through the Express Route circuits and peering, in fact. Okay,
Mhm.
so the things which we discussed, we also do the lab at the same time. Okay, we'll then it comes to the virtual machine. We'll talk about the virtual machine. What is virtual machine, right? What is Azure ARM VM, right? How do we deploy the virtual machine using the custom image, right? How do we generalize the VM image, right?
Mhm.
And apart from that, how do we capture the snapshot? Using the snapshot, how do we create a disk? Then using that is how do we create a virtual machine? Okay, not only in the Windows machine, we also talk about the Linux machine. Okay, we'll take you through the basics of the Linux machine as well. Okay,
Mhm.
basics. I'll tell you the overview of the Linux machine, how does that work, but again it's a OS concept.
Mhm.
Okay, and we gonna install the extension, VM extensions, right? And we'll talk about it. We'll talk about the Azure Kubernetes services. Why do we need the Kubernetes service and containers? So these are in great demand right now. Okay.
Yeah,
Uh,
it won't consider. Sorry to interrupt, but it won't consider in DevOps. Is it? Kubernetes is different, is it?
yeah, but you need to have the knowledge about it, right? How exactly Kubernetes it
Yeah.
works. Again, it's a Azure service only.
Okay.
Okay. We'll give you the lab access and we'll ask you to create the virtual machine using the portal, deploying the virtual machine using the ARM template, right? how do you configure the web app service, how do you configure the AKS. So we're gonna give you the hands-on experience on this part. And
Okay.
then Azure storage comes. So Azure storage is something where do you remember I spoke something about the shared access
Sir.
signature, right? So this is a key that you're gonna provide to a team to access it, right? Azure
Okay.
storage, we do have the different types of storage: table storage, queue storage, blob storage, right? The type of files and all that, we're gonna save it there.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
so how do we access those Azure storage account, right? And how do we attach or detach the the external storage account? We gonna talk about it. Okay,
Mhm.
what else? Okay, so merely having the storage won't help us, right? Merely having the Azure virtual machine running up fine won't help sometimes. Okay, there are scenarios so where virtual machine stops. Again, it's a machine, right, in the backend data center. Okay, due to some reason it gets corrupt, right? So we need to store it, restore it. How do we restore it? We're gonna use, there is something called the Azure backup service that we do have.
Mhm.
Okay, so that's where we store it using the Azure backup service. So at the time of virtual machine creation, we also have, there is something called the availability set and availability zone, and we'll take you through that as well. Why do we need to have those availability set and availability zone? What type of redundancy it has? Okay, we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it Azure data box, and we'll go give you uh, the lab access to that as well. Azure backup service, how do we implement it? How do we set the rules? There is a specific rules that you need to set, right? Every day at what time, or in a week you need to take the backup at so and so time, right? So that sort of things that we're going to configure it. Okay, uh, I just talked about the storage high Azure virtual machine availability as well, right? So in availability set we talk about the fault domain and update domain. Why do we need that? Okay, in order to have the virtual machine running up and fine with 99.99% SLA, Microsoft recommends us to have the virtual machine to be deployed in the availability set, so the availability zone. If one data center, if in a data center, if one racks due to some reason goes down, we have the instance coming up, right?
Mhm.
From the different racks as well, because that data center is consists of the three different racks connected with the same storage, the network and the power cable. Okay, due to some reason if one rack goes down, so we have the copy of the same instance in another rack. Okay, so one goes down, so we have another one coming up, providing zero disruptions or interruptions to our virtual machine or the services. Okay, if we talk about the geographical, what if one data center goes down, right? So we
Mhm.
do have, so we gonna deploy it to using the Azure, what do you call the, its availability set, availability zone. Okay, so where one data center will be in Hyderabad. Okay, if I talk about the south, okay, so another data center would be some hundred of kilometers far from that. If any disaster something happens in one data center, we have the another a data center, okay, which will be providing the services to us. There will be a syncing, right, between these data centers. Okay, the duplication of data will be there. I would say the copy of data of one data center and another data center, okay, of the same VM. We're gonna talk about it. Okay, and we're gonna set up the automatic scaling of the virtual machine. Let's suppose there is something called the matrix. Okay, we're gonna set the matrix, like if the CPU of a particular virtual machine, okay, is going, that is nothing but the virtual VM scale set, what you spoke. Okay,
Yeah.
right? So accordingly we're gonna set a matrix called if the 90% of CPU hits, so that's where we need to have the identical VM coming up. Okay, and that is nothing but the horizontal scaling. But when we talk about the vertical scaling is nothing but the resources, RAM got gonna increase, or the CPU gonna increase, right? So that is nothing but the vertical scaling. So we're gonna talk about it. Okay, we're gonna use the Azure advisor So Azure, so what all things that we have configured, and based upon the usage and everything, Azure, there is something called the Azure Advisor Survey. It gives you, so these things you need to cut down, these things you need to do, right, in order to have the great efficiency in terms of services and all, right. We talk about that as well. We'll take you through the Azure manages. How do we attach the Azure manages to a virtual machine? How do we initial a new database to that? How do we backup? How do we store it? Okay. How do we configure the Azure monitoring as well? In monitoring, we're gonna see how the usage would be, because and we can in the monitoring we can set the alerts kind of thing. If something goes beyond the threshold limit, so that's when alerts should trigger either via email or on Azure, right? That we usually do. And also we talk about it, the traffic manager, the application gateway, the routing method, the Azure VPN, virtual network peering. I spoke previously, right? So if we
Mm.
do have two different virtual network and we need to set up a communication between them, so that's when the Azure virtual network peering comes into picture.
Mm.
Okay, that we need to do. We need to have the Azure VPN gateway. Azure VPN gateway is required when we gonna configure the point to site, right, or site to site connectivity vnet. Okay, site to site VPN or point to site VPN, that we configure it. Okay, so let's suppose I do have the infrastructure or the server hosted on Azure and it is in office. Okay, I have my laptop here, right, but from my laptop I need to connect to my office system or the office website. Okay, so there is something called the virtual private network VPN we usually configure, right? So that sort of VPN is the point to site where this only single laptop gonna communicate or establish a communication to the server which is hosted on my office or the organization. Okay,
Mhm.
so that is nothing but the point to site. And here we need to, there are different method of security we gonna use, the certificate method. Okay, and also we're gonna use the AD credentials method as well. Okay, I will talk about it because once we get into this, there are more things that you're gonna learn about it. Okay, so technology itself is an ocean, to be honest. Okay, the more you dig it, the more you get it. Okay,
Mhm.
and apart from that, you're gonna have to configure the BGP with the Azure VPN gateway, right? The
Mhm.
Azure traffic manager. Okay, how do we implement the Azure traffic manager? Let's suppose I do have the virtual website, okay, hosted in particular region. Okay,
Mm.
so I can use this Azure traffic manager as a load balancer. Okay, so where the same in the backend there would be a, what our websites and everything what we gonna host, and the backend the bare metal would be there, the server would be there. Okay,
Mhm.
so I have deployed the virtual machine with this website, okay, in East US region. Okay, and I have configured in front of them, I have configured the Azure traffic manager, and I have the VM, and then in the backend I have this website, right? The same kind of website, I am same kind of data and everything. I gonna have a different region, West
Mhm.
US. Okay, if East US goes down, so I have the West US virtual machine which will be providing the same services. The thing what I explained about the Amazon commercial website.
Okay. But
So
that region we can select like any location wise or like
yeah, we can
basically
we can select, we can select.
it's a kind of a data center, right? It will be
Exactly,
specialized.
different data center we are selecting, basically the VM which is hosted in a different data center. Okay,
Mhm.
so that's the one. And integrating an on-prem network to the Azure network, the inter-site VPN. I spoke about site-to-site VPN gateway, right? The point-to-site VPN, the network watcher and all. And how do we troubleshoot the issue? So this is gonna Azure Express route. Okay,
Yeah.
uh, what kind of SKUs we are using? So everything we're gonna just talk about it. Monitoring, the log analytics. Azure monitoring is what sort of things that we're gonna monitor: the CPU usage, the RAM usage, how the virtual machine works, how the network works, right? So we need to monitor the things. So monitoring is very important. So there are scenarios where people don't go with the Azure Monitor native tool. Okay, so I have worked on the Genos monitoring tool as well as on Logic Monitor. Okay, as well as on the Azure Monitor. I'll take you through that as well. Custom roles. So what sort of custom roles that we can configure it depending on the usage and the requirement any organization is having. Okay, and providing access to the Azure resources by assigning the roles. So there is something called the RBAC, role based access control. Okay, so what sort of access has to be provided? Let's suppose by default we have one Azure account. Okay, so only one Azure account admin would be there. Okay, and one service admin would be there. Okay, and the other peoples who gonna access or managing the resources, everyone cannot have the service admin only. Then we have something called different role, the contributor access. We have the contributor roles we're gonna assign, or the reader access we're gonna assign. And so those things we're gonna take care about it. Recovery service vault. Okay, for the backup and all we need to have the vault, right? The backup policy, VM backup policy, what are policies that we're gonna set. Okay, we'll talk about this RBAC rules, what type of Azure users we have, the groups we have, right? We're going to take you that. And apart from that, we'll also talk about the Azure Active Directory. Okay, what sort of, how do we sync the on-prem users to the Azure using Azure AD Connect? Okay, Azure AD Sync we use. Okay, how do we manage this identity and access management? We'll talk about it. How do we configure this MFA? Right, so these things we talk about is on the Azure AD. Conditional access, what type of access we have. Okay, uh, we talk about it, Azure AD single sign on, AD join. So all these things will come, it is something related, as you have worked on the on-prem AD, so it would be pretty easy for you to understand and grab the things on Azure AD as well. Okay, so because for AD we're gonna give you the access as well. How do we reset it? Okay, how do we configure the domain tenants? Okay, if only we need to the complete domain, we can sync it with the on-prem, or we need to have only a particular OU, we can sync it, or we can have the hybrid model as well. Okay,
Okay.
what sort of authentication that we're gonna use? Single sign authentication, application proxy, password hash synchronization. When we do Azure AD Connect, okay, sync the user. So what sort of authentication that we use? The password hash synchronization is mainly used here. This is the one. Okay, and what else is left? Well, so yeah, so these are the things that we're gonna do. So it needs a nearly 40 hours of training. So it is one-to-one online training, right? And
Like
also we'll
one-to-one training.
one-to-one training is like, if you need only single, we can provide that as well, right? I believe you spoke with Ganesh, so Ganesh will give you more insight on that part.
No,
Okay, if
I,
you
I,
need,
no, if it is like, it is completely online training or offline?
it's a online training, online
Okay,
training.
what is the duration, everything? Like 1 month,
It's
huh?
it's it's a 40 hours of training.
40 hours means so per day, 1 hour you will teach, huh?
Yeah, 1 hour. So see Salman, let me tell you one thing. So if I talk about, okay, if I start my classes and everything for 1 hour, if I speak about, okay, so up to 30 minutes or 40 minutes, you will be listening to the class with full concentration.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but when it goes beyond that, so that's where, okay, chalo baba, this is something more than enough for the day.
Okay,
Right?
okay.
Because this is not only the class, I would say this is not on the training.
Yeah,
It's a live demo.
correct.
You're gonna do that. You'll be working. You'll be trained as an Azure, administrator here, right?
Okay.
You'll be deploying the resources and everything. See, listening to the training and you think that you're gonna work in the organization, I would say it's a big no, because real time is altogether a different issue, different things.
Correct. Mm.
So you need to think about it. You need to be extra careful when you work upon. Okay, so we don't want our folks to face challenges when it comes to their real time environment. So that's the reason we are giving the real time exposure here, real time training here. Okay,
Okay.
we're gonna help you with the mock interviews. Okay, we gonna take you through the real time projects. Okay, we'll give you the task. Okay, you have to deploy it, you have to do that. This is not that only the virtual machine, we'll give you one infrastructure. Okay,
Mm.
this one region, and give you some another infrastructure on different region. We'll ask you to establish a connectivity.
Mm. Okay.
Okay, so that sort of things is nothing but the you know what you call the real time exposure that you're gonna get, and we're gonna provide you 24 by 7 support. And also you need to have the certification, we're gonna help you with that certification as well.
Okay.
Okay, so that's a kind of training that we're gonna provide you here. Okay,
Is there
so
any chances for replacement kind of things, or how it will? You will be assist kind of something.
we'll help you with the mock interviews, we'll give you the placement assistance. Okay, the more Ganesh can provide you the more insight on that part. Okay, so I'm a trainer, definitely I can help you out, but again, Ganesh is the person who will be coordinating with the everything. Okay,
Okay.
so let
What
me
will be the
Ganesh.
timing of the shift? Like,
uh so just ask your folks to go through that. And because I work during the US hours. Okay, so my shift starts at 6 p.m. and then ends at 3:30 p.m. in the morning.
actually, I am also in the same shift.
Okay, so accordingly we'll coordinate and we'll set up shift this training times and all.